From the Empire State, Steve and Denise Hatch are next.
What's up, guys? This is Jeremy McGrath, the King of Supercross, and you are listening to the Toledo Track and Trail Podcast. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is Season 3, Episode 5 of the Toledo Track and Trail Podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and comment below. Regardless, Marty and I thank you so much for your support, as always. Today's guests are a husband and wife coaching, mentoring, training, racing team. The husband, Steve, is my all-time favorite off-road racer. Welcome, New York's Steve and Denise Hatch to the Toledo Track and Trail Podcast. Welcome, guys. How you doing?
Terrific.
Thank you. Doing good.
We're doing great. How are you guys?
We're
Good.
doing good.
Did you have to shovel snow today?
Yes.
Oh, we didn't.
Have
51
a ton of
degrees tomorrow.
snow.
51
And
degrees
I-
tomorrow. So it's going to be, all snow's going to be gone for us. So
Yeah, it's going to be 50, and then by the end of the week, it's going to drop to 9.
we'll send you some heat.
And then we're actually headed to New York Friday. We're going to Niagara Falls. We're staying at a Airbnb somewhere up there. So we'll be, I don't know how far away that is from you guys, but yeah, we're going to first time to Niagara, the Falls, I guess. So it's going to be great.
Fantastic. That'll be beautiful in the winter. Yeah, it's about 3 hours north of us. It's going to be cold.
Yeah. I told my wife tonight, I said, we might be driving in some ice up there. So we'll see. We'll just figure it out and take our time. So we're excited to go see that. But so you guys are back in the state of New York. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Yes, we
Okay.
both grew up here and lived out west for a lot of years. We were in Arizona for 17 years, mostly through Steve's career, really. We should have been on the East Coast, but we were out west. And then we came back here about 8 years ago.
Nice. And you said you met in New York. Let's talk a little bit about that, just for hoops and giggles. Where did you guys meet? That kind of thing.
We met in California.
Had to track her down. So her sister used to cut my mechanic's hair, and once we were out in California, basically she said, "Hey, her sister said, hey, you got to meet these guys. They're a ton of fun on dirt bikes, and come out, and go riding with us." So she jumped on the back with me, and I pinned it and made sure she held on a lot, and she stayed on, and the rest is history. I was honored to make her my wife. So we've had a lot of fun. We're adventure seekers and athletic and enjoy the outdoors. So it was a perfect storm.
And the funny thing is our parents live about 20 minutes from each other, just over a hill back here in New York. So
Well, that's. I mean, you can't make that kind of thing up. I mean,
you cannot make that kind of stuff
No.
up.
no, that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Well, it's really cool because from where they are too, Ithaca, of course, you got Watkins Glen, the Gorge, you got all the lakes. So you definitely got some great outdoor adventure stuff out there for sure.
And Denise, I'm going off the memory bank here, but your sister is married to Rodney Smith, correct?
She was.
She was. Okay.
She was, yeah.
Okay.
So during their career, we got to spend a lot of time together. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, I remember always at the races when we did GNCCs way back when. It was, you guys were always, hanging around the races together, which you're on the same team, so that kind of helps. But yeah, I do remember that, from way back when. So,
It's fantastic.
yes.
Yeah, good years.
So you're in New York, and what are you guys doing? What are you doing now? And then we'll kind of work backwards a little bit. What are you guys doing currently as far as careers, your team, the race team, the mentoring, the coaching?
So we've been mentoring, coaching, and training riders with the SteveHatchRacing.com company for about the last 16 years, since I retired at the end of 2005. And then the last couple of years, Denise and I have made a sister company, PowerTheMind.Coach, and we've been using the mindset for athletes in all levels, in all disciplines of sports, but mostly focusing on our pro and up-and-coming motorcycle racers. But Denise has worked with some of the best athletes around the planet, and it just made sense at this time to navigate with everything going on in the world and the pandemic, and you name it. We've kind of been doing it behind the scenes the last 22 years anyway, as far as giving the mindset and all the stuff behind there, but we've put it all together and made it kind of all in one. That can take somebody from a complete beginner to a top pro, and from one to ride a little better in the backyard to win national championships or world championships at the 6 days.
Well, I think last week when Ryan was on, whoops, not make all kinds of noise here. When Ryan was on, that's what he said that helped him probably most was Denise with a mindset and being mentally prepared.
Yeah, he said Steve was okay.
Yeah, he said Steve
but he
was
said
okay.
Denise for sure was the biggest.
He threw Steve under the bus, didn't he? Yeah.
Ryan's awesome.
No,
well, as Steve and I always say, riders or athletes in general will prepare themselves in their sport and in their nutrition and in their fitness levels. And the last thing to come, and quite often athletes don't really even know about it, is the mindset. And we always say it's what separates the good from the great.
Yeah, and I remember, and this is a lot of years ago now, but I remember, I don't know, Steve, if you gave me the book, you used to have a booklet, and then it had like some training exercises and that kind of thing. Do you still offer that to your riders?
Yeah, so that was called Extreme Fitness. That was the first booklet we did, and yeah, I've got it. It's been renditioned a few times, but yeah, we still do on Steve Hatch Racing. It's basically a video, and on all those stories and training are in documents on there that you can actually purchase and go through the whole system. So yeah, that was Denise and I were into the training side and the mindset side for years and years.
Go ahead, Mary.
Well, we're talking about the website. We might as well jump in that right quick. Just what are you offering? Because I think I don't know if you're still doing DVDs like that I have, but I think you've gone a lot more digital now, haven't you, Steve?
Yeah, so both. So Marty, the DVDs you have, there's a volume 1 through 8. They each have 10 videos on them. It took me over 3 years to film it between Arizona, New York, and California. So that was a long time coming, but we've also taken those and put them into online. So when you buy the online system now, all those 80 clips basically are online with the videos, and then 80 documents on mindset, nutrition, training, how to prepare, how to win a race, how to ride, all the stuff that goes with racing and dirt bikes.
Well,
that website is, again, let's go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
That out there.
Plug that out there again.
Sure. It's stevehatchracing.com. And then we have the sister website, which is powerthemind.coach, which is the mindset one. And we've got online programs there too, 4 different programs. And we're going to give a pro code to give a discount on the show here a little bit later.
Cool.
Great. Well, I remember distinctly about that booklet. And this is probably, 1998, 99. It's been a long time. But, I remember a couple things about it. One, it was very good, and I did try to do the exercises in it, when I can. And I was still in high school at that time. But I remember you were doing a picture that you were doing like some sit-ups on a beach or something, I think it was. Do I have that right?
Yeah, so good memory.
Yeah.
That was actually during our honeymoon in Hawaii. So, we took the camera and said, okay, you know what? We might as well
work.
Start the business early, right? Make it happen.
Well, that's great. And the other thing I remember, 2 things I remember distinctly about the booklet is I let, Cody Maston, right?
Sure, yeah.
I let him borrow the book, and I have not seen the book return.
Well, he doesn't live very far away. We can go get it.
The other thing, and I hope he listens to this because he's got another thing of mine. Okay, so Marty did at the track, the motocross track, MX Express. They did an enduro cross, okay, and we had a local TV channel station come out and cover it, and then they sold a DVD, and I paid $35 for that DVD. Is they asked me to kind of co-host the thing, which was fun, and Marty's family was gracious about it and stuff. So I bought the DVD. And Cody raced it, and he won. And he's like, "Hey, can I borrow that DVD?" I'm like, "Yeah." Well, I haven't seen that back either, so go figure. But the other thing I want to point out, or what I remember distinctly about the booklet, was how much you praised Denise and the mindset. And we brought this up with Ryan last week because I think you put in there that you got yourself, Steve, in your racing day so mentally focused and so mentally prepared and physically prepared for a GNCC, I think you said something like at the end of the GNCC, you felt like you were in such great shape you could go out and do it again.
Yeah, that was exactly the truth. And I'd always been known kind of and worked really hard at training side of it. And that was kind of my modality that I really went after and loved, and my passion, and racing, obviously, and riding the dirt bike, of course. But when I got with Denise and we got married and really worked on the mindset, she's brilliant at it. You'll hear tons of studying. She has a great system and way to get your best performance when it counts, the peak performance, when the gate drop or the flag goes. Everybody's pretty brilliant in the backyard or in practice. It's really flips, as she'll tell you, on the racing side thing and mindset. So she really helped me and had years and years of study and done her own, different mind-muscle connection, different programs she's done over the years. So there's been a lot behind what she's done, but she's brilliant. And once I with her and we worked on this also, which is kind of tough because it's pretty close to home when it's your wife. But she was amazing and really took my riding and racing to the next level when it counted. 90% of it's mindset at that level. Everybody's fit, everybody's fast. Then it comes down to the mindset. No question about it.
So,
Steve, there's 3 words. Yeah. 2 words. Yes, dear. That's it.
That's right.
That's
until I started to get close to, maybe like what he could improve on in a race, and then it wasn't so much yes, dear.
Nothing. I think I've got it perfectly. I'm not showing my cards.
Well, so that presents an interesting topic, and so how do you? Okay, so you meet, and obviously with Denise's background and that kind of thing, you meet, you get married. I mean, is it at what point do you say to each other? I mean, marriage is a team, right? But at what point do you say, does Steve go to Denise and Denise, I need you, I need your help. You take me to that next level, or do you, Denise, go to Steve and say, hey, you got to do something different here, buddy? I mean, how do you blend that marriage part, helping your partner? I don't know.
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear.
Yeah,
that works.
Yeah. What was the kind of connection there? I guess.
How did it go?
Yeah,
I'm sure we have 2 completely different stories about it. Which one would you like?
Well, you can document them both.
Go ahead, tell us the truth.
Exactly.
Well, Steve's, first of all, he's gracious. Steve Hatch, he's one of the nicest guys on the planet. And so he's very gracious, and he really accepted my counsel and insight until it got a little close to home. Like I was saying, when I could see things that he didn't want me to see, or, when you start getting a little close to home with the behaviors or the beliefs that aren't serving your.
Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a little.
Yeah, we had a little cutout. So you were saying about between the getting a little close to home. Sorry for the interruption in the service there. We gotta love Zoom sometimes, but it's close to the home, and you're trying to balance that giving advice without kind of stepping over, I think.
Exactly. But I think we navigated it well. And then there were times where, Steve also had some great coaches through the years. And there were times where, I would say something to him, and a couple of years later he'd go, hey, I learned something today. And it's like, and then I would go, yeah, I told you that 2 years ago. We had that too.
Well, I gotta imagine that being at the top of the top, to have somebody tell you you're probably not doing just right, it's got to be tough. I mean, it does. No matter, I got to believe that Steve in his mind, when you told him that's what he need to be doing, he's going, yeah, I probably should, but you know how we are, us
right.
guys.
You don't want to say it out.
We don't want to say it out loud or to
right.
anybody else that my wife was right, but it's got to be tough. It's when you're at the peak of your performance, and then somebody else tells you can even be better and faster. It's got to be a little tough, I would say.
What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, it was great. I was always seeking to be better every single day. and I knew Denise had tools and the wisdom and could help me. The trick was just like she's saying, when it comes to toughness and the sport and racing and being a guy like we all are, it's not easy to show your cards. It's hard to have a tough image when you got a soft heart, and you don't really want your competitors to know that. So that was the biggest thing. I mean, I was, I didn't always see it clearly. It's when you're a racer, it's right in front of you, and somebody from 30,000 feet or your wife right next to you can say, "Hey, this is really what you need to work on. I think you're going down this road, which is probably maybe the wrong road of where we need to go to get you back to the peak performance." So it was definitely. I was, honored and thankful to have that, and still do. She's brilliant with all the mindset and helping always. But I think it was tough at times, especially coming over, whatever adversity and injury and bikes breaking and just part of the heartbreak. She was, we're a team, and we always have been and always will be. And it was tough. Your partner and your friends and family and sponsors and teams are so close that they feel it too when you're not at your best or something happens that takes the win away, let's say.
Well, I was going to go back to what Denise was saying about, a lot of riders, have sort of got the nutrition down and in the riding skills down. But over the last 7 years at the track, some of the things I've seen missing is definitely as a younger riders, definitely nutrition. I think Ryan even made a comment about when he was racing back about strawberries and bottle of water or something like that was what he had had to get out there and race. But I do see a little bit of any of the kids that's really trying to do looking at nutrition, but really the mindset. And I guess we see that probably, in just such a basic in a basic event is when we see on TV one of these riders, top riders win. They come off it the next weekend. Their mind is just so in tune about winning, and they're, everything's exciting and good. And, they go out there and just crank out the next week. But I guess it's interesting to get Denise's take on what's it like, or how long does it take you to get to being that way every week, whether you win or not, being that you got that mindset,
the confidence side.
Confidence side.
That's it. It's the consistency, right? Because the people at the top, you might go in and put in a really good performance, but then to repeat that consistency. And, one of the things we talk a lot about is that people tend to think that mindset somehow is separate from nutrition or hydration. And it really isn't. It's a whole package. And so I always speak to the physiological side of mindset, because if you're not hydrated, the very first thing to go when you become dehydrated in a race, which is inevitable, you cannot match water intake to the water loss, is going to be the brain, because the brain is 86% water. So that's the first thing to go. You're going to lose your focus. So, really, how do you eat and hydrate in a way that you're going to be able to keep optimal focus, right? So that it all works together. But I want to go back and say something else that, just to speak about Steve, for instance. When you get these guys that at the top level that will do whatever it takes to win, their mind is open enough, and that's what I've seen with. Until somebody has that consistency in championship, no matter what the sport. And I've worked in all the sports, NFL, Major League Ball, soccer teams, golf. Until somebody has that confidence for consistent winning, they're going to be searching, especially if they want to be the best. They're going to be open-minded enough that they're going to go, well, what do you have to tell me? What do I need to learn over here? Chew the chicken, spit out the bones. But that was the thing that, was really masterful about Steve, is that he was open-minded. He was going to try anything. I mean, if I said, well, let's eat this box of sardines here because it's going to make you go faster, he'd do it.
I'll buy a dozen.
Yeah.
You're a better man than I am.
Yes.
That's for sure. Well, that's and speaking of the different, sports that you've coached and that kind of thing, Denise, what, and maybe you don't want to say out, on a podcast, but I mean, what sport athletes are the most challenging? in your experience?
Challenging in what way?
I'd say maybe challenging, like maybe not the most open-minded, or the most difficult maybe to work with. That as far as taking your advice and that kind of thing. Was there any like? And I'm just making this up. Was it the tennis players? They were just man, they're all of them are a little bit more difficult than others, or maybe there's not. Just out of curiosity to see what you experienced over your coaching time.
I found most all teams or individual athletes. I've worked with both. I've worked with pro teams. I've worked with individual athletes. But the hardest to sell was the hockey teams, and they were kind of known for that. Interesting, huh?
That is interesting. Yeah.
What more do you need to know? Hit him with a stick.
Yeah.
Keep on skating.
That's it. Hit him harder.
Hit him harder. Yeah.
Hit him again.
Hit him again.
Did you ever have to be cautious with coaching him, that you didn't want him to throw down with you on the ice or nothing?
It's right. Exactly. I'll tell you a funny story. I was asked to work with this. He was a linebacker for Dallas at the time. Massive man, and when the coaches brought me to meet him, I think he had like 10 45 plates stacked on each end of this bar, and he had his sunglasses on, and he was doing these the lifts, but he had asked about my services. And so when I finally hooked up with him and got to meet him, there he was with a hood over his head and these big sunglasses, and I couldn't get eye contact, and I thought, oh boy, the coaches, I could tell the coaches were even a little nervous about introducing me to him. And I thought, something's going on here. I'm not sure what it is. It ends up that he had a hard life. As we worked together, I think he lost an uncle to murder, but what I figured out about him was his driving force was to buy his mom a house.
Wow.
So I took a deep breath and I stood in front of him and I said, hey, I got a lot to share with you, and I'll just give it to you as I know it to be able to help you however I can. But if at any point I've crossed the line, well, then you have the permission to do like my son does to me. Just you can just go, way too much information, way too much information.
Well, that's cool. Did you improve? I assume he improved and became a great, probably a better player.
You're the best teacher I've ever had. And so, I guess we're having a little moment of unstable. You never know how you're going to affect somebody. And what I've learned over the years is, people will either take it or they won't. But that's where I've come to. But I've had some interesting characters to work with. I can tell you some great stories.
Can you just share one? I don't want you to break confidentiality or anything, but can you share a kind of an interesting story that maybe the audience would know about by chance?
Well, one of the most interesting stories that I tell a lot, because I was really fascinated with this. So anyway, I want
to start again.
Yeah, sorry. Can you start over there?
Yeah, so he got the highest paid contract in the history of baseball at that time. And he said, which was upward about 140 million at the time. And he said, I'm not the best choice for this, but what I know is that I could make this happen. And so he was as astute on mindset as I could teach him. I learned immense things from him. He was sitting in vortexes in Sedona and working on his mindset things. And he was also a guitar player. So he was making these guitar riffs and putting into them his basically mantras or statements about things that he wanted to make happen. Well, his goal was to get the San Francisco Giants to World Series championship, because they hadn't done it since the 1950s. And this is now 2010 maybe. And he ended up, this young man was so powerful in his mindset. while he was on the team, the San Francisco Giants, I think they won 4 world championships in the 7 years he was on the team. And it was just undeniable. He said, he came on the team and he said, I'm going to push for the right coaches. I'm going to manifest, was his word. I'm going to manifest the right coaches, the right team, the right players, the right situation that we can win championship here. And they went on to win 4 of them and hadn't done so since the 1950s. And I don't, when I look at that, I realize like one person and that kind of mindset can make a difference for an entire team. So I just always found that really fascinating.
That's awesome.
Exactly. I think, the same thing goes the other direction too. One person that's negative goes the same way. So it is so important.
It's very true, Marty. It just takes one person and it can destroy an entire team. Yep.
Do you just out of curiosity, do you ever focus your training with business leaders? Maybe not necessarily athletes, but taking that it's almost like it sounds like a leadership type of training as well. You ever take that to maybe the business community?
I have many creative CEOs over the years that I've worked with, because it crosses over, right? Like mindset isn't just about sports. It's about the way you live your life. It's about the creativity that you have. It's about the leadership. It's about how you are in relationships. It crosses over to everything. And so one of the things that Steve and I always talk about is that when we get the opportunity to work with a young athlete, we say to them, like, this is going to change your life. This is going to help you to become a champion, because that's what we do, is we build champions, but it's also going to change your life. And yes, so good question.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, that's great, because I tell you one thing, racing in general has taught me a lot of things, and I was an A rider, but I think it could, no matter your level, I think racing can teach so many lessons, life lessons on, not giving up, because, my family owns a business. Marty's family has owned a business and different things. And it's kind of like an enduro, when it gets tough, you got to mentally stay in it and not quit, not give up, or else you're never going to get to the finish line. So I don't know. It's pretty interesting parallels there.
Totally. And, when I always say, when I get to work with these guys, and Steve included, I think he's one of the most steady people on the planet. And it's I don't think there's any other sport out there that requires focus for the length of time that motor racers have to focus at that intensity. Right. And it's a real risk. If you're not focused, you could be cartwheeling and getting hurt. And so one of the things that we do tell these young riders is that racing people really stable. They stay in the game, and you're right, it crosses over to everything. It's a really solid group of people. When you get that mindset and you get that stick-to-itiveness, you stay in there. It crosses over into every part of your life. Makes for very stable people.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I told my wife when I met her. I'm like, you're getting a good one here. I'm a racer, right?
So good, Steve.
We got the same story.
Use that.
Yeah.
Use that, Steve.
Hey, it worked for us.
Marty, I think Marty used it too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one thing I had going for me.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Well, just to recap, in case somebody's just joining us now, we are talking with Denise Hatch and Steve.
That's right. No, that's
Sorry, I'm going to shut up now.
No.
You're good.
That's great. Well, actually, I'm wondering, what does Steve do? It sounds like Denise has got it all.
Well, do
you ride, Denise?
Do you ride?
I used to, and I traded the bikes in for horses.
Oh no. I've got a few I'll send out to you. Okay.
Well, I've said this on a couple of podcasts, but Ryan, it sounds like his daughter is in the horses too. But you ever heard of that country song, "Save a Horse, Ride a Dirt Bike"? That's that's my theory on horses. But they scare me. There's just something about a 1,000-pound animal that could just throw me off at any time. I'd rather take my chance on a 200-pound motorcycle.
I don't know, man. I've had some get-offs on a dirt bike way more than I have on a horse.
Exactly.
So.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those dirt bikes bite.
Yeah. They both can both can bite you. You got any good war stories on the horses, Denise or Steve?
Oh, we've got good. The year we were living in Arizona and Steve was still racing, I had gotten a racehorse just by accident. I kind of took it over because I didn't want it to go back on the track. She was a racehorse, but she used to race him on the bikes. And so Steve and I
or running. I'd be jogging or running. Crazy horse. It was like competitive more than me, which was insane.
So I'm gonna turn into a big wuss here. Okay. So I will have to mention this as a I'm not into horses. I respect it. It's cool. Just like any other sport or hobby, it's just a different thing that people are into. But have you ever watched the documentary on the Secretariat?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it fantastic?
Oh, I mean, I'm man enough to admit, I think I cried for 5 minutes. I mean, it was so beautifully done. And I remember as a kid, my family was into horses, and they always talked about Secretariat. I'm like, what Secretariat? What in the world? What is that? And then I actually just watched it within the last couple months, and I was like, that is cool. I mean, he just downright, he had the mindset. I mean, he just
That's
downright
right.
smoked them. I mean, just
That's
smoked
right.
them. It was cool. But anyway,
Seabiscuit, same thing. Another great story is Seabiscuit. You see those small horses. He was really a smaller horse, but he had the heart. And that's, it's one of the things Steve and I always talk about is like you look for the same thing, whether it's animal, no matter what sport, no matter what ride, you look for the heart. And Steve and I had the opportunity to tour Joe Gibbs' racing facility down in North Carolina, fantastic facility. And what a neat coach. His team were his kids. But Coy, his son, took us on a tour around the facility, and they had just started a dirt bike section. So we got to go down and see the dirt bike section that they had put in this massive facility in North Carolina. And Coy was telling us a story about Joe, how he picked his draft picks. And he said he'd strip them down and they'd be in their boxers, and he'd go down the line, he'd look at each one of them, their bodies, their injuries, their build, their strength, and he'd turn them to the side, and he'd go down the line and look at them. He'd turn them to the back, and he'd go down the line and look at them. He said, but at the end of the day, he said, my dad chose those draft picks based on who had the most heart. And, I think that that's really, part of what it comes down to is how much do you want it? How badly do you want it? And this guy, talk about heart, all day long. This, he would do whatever it took because he wanted it so badly. And that builds a champion. You're going to find your way to it when you have that kind of drive and desire.
absolutely.
Was you a farm boy, Steve?
No, I grew up on like 100 acres, but no farm, but out in the woods a bunch and in the fields and playing. But I definitely played all the sports and definitely determined.
Well, I just had to say, of course, I was just over the border in Pennsylvania from you. So, but that it's a little different culture even in that area though. I mean, that's stuff that you were a self-starter when you were kids. You didn't have a lot of people out there. So you did things, you made things happen and that kind of stuff. And, growing up, we worked the farm, and I didn't live on a farm, but I worked on the farm, and it was just getting up and having a routine and learning responsibility, and all that piece all plays into how dedicated you get into anything, and I was going to tell Denise my horse story. So all my kids were born in Arizona. We lived there 10 years, and they were born. And of course we brought all the bikes back, and we get back to Pennsylvania, and all the riding that was available when I was younger was now gone. Closed everything up.
Right.
They did, unless you had 150 acres, 1,000 acres, you had no place to ride. So of course, we took and it was like, oh, we ride around the yard for a little bit, and the kids and Lori, she rode, and myself, and finally we just started selling the bikes off. And so we finally sold my bike off. And my wife said, she grew up with horses, and I grew up around horses, and so she had found one. And I said, well, I sold my bike today. You better go grab your horse. So she went and bought this horse, and she was the only one that could ride it. Well, we didn't have a trailer at the time, so 7 miles of riding this horse back to our place. And about halfway, it started raining, and all of a sudden, it was my issue to deal with that horse to ride the rest of the way home. But we started with that horse, and then you know how it goes. Next thing you know, somebody's got a horse that really needs to get rid of, and we ended up with Arabs, but they were the Polish Arabs, which is a smaller horse, which for the kids was just the absolute greatest thing. They weren't huge. They were very docile. They were very, family friendly. And so my kids grew up, in the morning, feeding, and, summertime we were haying and doing all that kind of stuff, and
Chores, I think they call it. Yeah.
and, the same thing now. I see the drive in them, whatever they do now, they sort of have that drive where, it's second nature. Of course, her mom's always on a dead run. No matter what she does, she's always on a
Right.
run. But, it is now whatever they do, but it's that culture. I think maybe, probably I want to say the Eastern culture, East United States culture. It just seems like that, you learn, you do a lot of things, what can you do when you're up in the country in New York, shovel snow and go out and play in the snow, or play with
Ride
yourselves,
horses,
but
maybe.
ride horses.
Yeah.
So we've had many horses. We actually moved there. We moved to Ohio with 15.
15
So
horses?
we moved here with 15 horses, and
That's a long
That's
way to ride them, Marty.
responsibility.
it was.
Did you have to
I
ride 'em all the way
spent
back?
6 months riding them from Pennsylvania to here. No, we hauled them a number of trips back and forth from there to here, and of course I think we're down to 5 now. I think but it still is. My daughter, ended up becoming into the veterinarian side of life, and the boys, not necessarily liking the horses as much, but they've gone into dirt bikes and grown up, and now grandkids are getting into that. But like I said, it's that culture, and that I think not everyone, not out west is a little different, and
You think
mindset.
it's a little bit more, and do you think it's a little bit more, I don't want to say laissez-faire. That's wrong to say, but I mean, do you guys see that, being that you're from New York, but you were living in Arizona for a little bit? Do you think people on the East Coast are like kind of what Marty's kind of indicating, like a little bit more roll up your sleeves, get up early? Do you guys witness that at all?
We talk a lot about that. It's different. The West Coast, East Coast is very different. And I think that a lot of that roll the sleeves up and get in it on the East Coast is that the weather's tough. This isn't easy weather. I was raised on a farm back in New York. So I have that ethic. I've also known many people on the West Coast were raised on ranches and hard workers. It's just a very different mentality. I don't know that we've really put our finger on it yet. I think people back in the East Coast are a little tougher because of the weather.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
Nice weather makes you softer.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to be a little softer.
Yeah, I just texted a guy in a club the other day, because we had a guy in a club that moved from Toledo to South Carolina, or maybe it's Zach, maybe it's North Carolina. I can't remember which. Somewhere warmer and nicer than here. And I'm like, I don't know why we continue to live here. I mean, I love it in Toledo. Don't get me wrong, but when it's 5 degrees, you guys know, you're from this area, or up this way, and it's like, yeah, you're just like, man, why in the world we live when it's 5 degrees out? Be nice to wear a sun, or a sun hat and shorts all year, but we don't. So, but
Well, I tell Marty all the time, mutual friend of Steve and mine. I tell him he's soft all the time, but I really can't say that because he's 68, I think, somewhere around there,
is he 68?
and he still rides almost every
He's
day.
tough. Yeah, Marty's tough.
Yeah, and he goes out and he rides every day. And
Well, he came to our a little story about him. We've talked about it on podcasts before, but he came to our race, our club race. What was it, 2 years ago? He smoked a tree. His shoulders popped out. Somehow got it popped back in and finished the race. So there you go. Tough guy. But Steve, jumping to you real quick. You growing up in New York. When do you start riding? What's your racing history?
So I grew up in upstate New York, where we're at now, and my dad was always my mom and dad were both school teachers for 30 years, and my sister's school teacher for years too, once we got out of college. But so he was restoring cars as his pastime and passion, British sports cars. So we'd go to car shows, and I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and there was a kind of the flea market where all the used stuff is for sale. This little $35 mini bike, piece of junk, Bridge and Stratton. I think it was from Montgomery Ward or one of those deals way back in the day. Didn't run, no brakes, and I wanted it so badly. My parents were pretty smart with all the psychology. They said, well, Steve, you know what? If you want to do the dishes, we didn't have a dishwasher at the time, and we did, but it broke. So my sister and I shared doing the dishes week in and week out. If you want to do the dishes for 7 weeks at $5 a week, that's your $35. We'll get it for you. And I said, absolutely. Yep, I'm in. So they're like, what? Oh, no, I didn't think you'd say he was in. That was a pretty big deal. So I scrubbed those dishes, got the mini bike that day, and rode it with no brake. And my dad helped me put it together. He didn't know anything about motorcycles. He's brilliant on cars, and he's won best of shows and restorations and engines and you name it on a car. But on a motorcycle, we didn't know which side the throttle goes on. So we jerry-rigged a bunch of stuff on the thing. No brakes. I'd wear the tips of my shoes off, dragging my feet, trying to stop, and rode that thing around the field for a couple of 2-3 years. And then a buddy basically at school, one of my good friends, said, hey, we're racing dirt bikes with a bunch of friends that are older guys, but most of them are experts and pros in New York. You should go. And I said, oh, I don't think so. I think, I was into football and basketball and baseball and everything else. But he talked me into it, and went to the first race nervous and scared, and probably about 11 years old at the time, or 12. And anyway, I think there was only 4 of us in the class, but I ended up getting second, and I was hooked from that day ever since.
That's awesome. And was that a motocross?
No, that was a hare scrambles, like a 1 hour hare scrambles up in right off of the Ithaca, and it's Ithaca. Cayuga Lake, which is right in the center and the tip of Ithaca, right where Cornell and Ithaca College is. So it was right off the side of the lake and beautiful overlooking the lake. But
it was right there in right off the lake in Ithaca.
Yeah. Yep.
What years was that?
Sorry.
What years was that?
I think it was up on the hill on the east side, and Jake's Chicken Farm. I remember it was a big, farm up on top of there. But as you know, living back here, Marty, the sides and the hills kind of taper down into the Cayuga Lake, 42 miles long, and it was halfway up the lake on the east side. And I remember enjoying the view, but being so nervous that I didn't know why I was at a motorcycle race. But I'm glad he talked me into it, and it's been a passion ever since.
That's cool.
Where was the? I'm going to fast forward a little bit, but it was like around the mid '90s. There was a national hare scramble in New York. Where was that at? Do you remember that?
Good memory. So that was in Speedsville, which is right here, like 20 minutes from my house. That's where I'd usually practice and ride. My mentor, Ray Davis, he was from right around that area. Again, like you were saying, came from a big, huge farm, and a lot of my friends were all farmers and were into that. So that mentality, just like Denise growing up on the farm, was definitely around. And I think you guys are right, just kind of saying, I think the weather makes you tough, but I also think there's just that toughness up here. Not that there isn't in any other states, but I've seen it and obviously trying to always delve into why some racers are better in certain areas. And obviously the tougher, not all the way just physical toughness, but the mental toughness, in my opinion, usually comes from the north, west, east, or wherever, but it's usually where it's snowy, rainy, gnarly. You got to wash your bike and pay, an hour worth of work. And, back in the day when we had the car washes, $25 worth of $1 car wash deal. And the car wash guy was pissed off that, 18 pounds of mud was, just coming off your fender and lost the whole bike and body.
Shovel.
Well,
shovel. He would just, luckily I got to be really good friends with him, and he liked me because I'd tell him about the races and help him shovel the all the earth of New York back into the hole there at the car wash in Ithaca. But I think that toughness to how bad do you want something in a sport. And I think that's it. When I moved to Arizona, I mean, those guys are all tough too, of course, but, just riding my bike and not having to wash it every single time, it was like, wow, this is like cheating. If I grew up out here and then move back to the mud, I would probably take up golf or do something else because I've been already.
Well, we did a couple of, I want to say they were in Duro. No, I guess they were hare scrambles there now, just right there by Elmira. I was trying to think what the little burg was. It was just, I want to say it was just a little east and south maybe of Elmira. I don't remember but they had one there on the side hill down through the creek and around there. And it was usually always muddy.
Well, my first national, and I wanted to ask that because you were there, Steve. I think you actually won that day. I if I remember right, you and Smith and I think Hawkins, you three were like just dicing through the woods the whole time. I did one lap in 3 hours. I was in a 125C class, and I crashed probably 4 times before I got to the first turn. And it rained the whole night before. Me and my parents slept in a tent out in some grassy field somewhere, and I was on the downside of the tent. I do remember that. And the rain guard didn't quite cover, so I woke up in a big muddy big wet soaked mess, and then had to go ride for 3 hours and did one lap in 1 hour. So that was a miserable day for me. But you quickly learn how to ride in that sloppy mess, especially in like New York and Pennsylvania and Southern Ohio. There's always that notorious Southern Ohio mud. And so what year did you become officially pro, Steve?
So, I did that hare scrambles, and like I mentioned, a bunch of the guys around here, my buddy and I were the youngest too. So most of them were 5 or 10 years older than us. So they were, 17 to 22-ish, and experts or pros. So they beat us up and roosted us in the mud holes and tied us upside down by our ankles, anything and everything to pick on us guys and make us tough. So that was probably a blessing and a curse. But once we got bigger and stronger and could get even, we went faster. But I turned pro in motocross. I went back and forth between hare scrambles and motocross, and turned pro in motocross at 16 when I could. And then I turned pro also in off-road at 16 and was winning the New York State Championships and stuff.
Did you ride any national motocross?
A couple. I did Broome Tioga, which is right here in our backyard, and I did qualify. And I think I ended up there was 120 guys, as you guys probably remember back in the day. There was a lot of guys trying to qualify for the outdoor, and they had the 125, 250 class, and 500. I was riding a 250 at the time. I think I was 17 or 18, and my buddy, we thought it would be better to put me on a KX 500, which I'd never ridden a 500. So not a good idea, especially because I was a little heavy on the throttle hand anyway. Yeah, the first 5 times practicing on it, I flipped over backwards so fast that all I remember is hitting on my back and then on my face the other way from it violently flipping over backwards like 3rd, 4th gear. But anyway, I did. I started in 4th gear, believe it or not, because I weighed about 140 pounds at the time, and I made it in there. I think I got out of 40 that made it out of 120. I think I got 27th, and then the second moto got 23rd. But the kicker is I got lapped twice by Jeff Stanton and all the Missile Factory guys, Jeff Ward and all those guys. So, it was way faster than I was and way more fit. So that was my intro to the pros and what they were capable of doing. I was in awe.
Yeah, that's we asked Ryan kind of the same thing. You just kind of alluded to that. He mentioned about the nutrition. Remember, he said, we asked him, what was the first kind of your memory of getting to the pro nationals, and what stuck out to you? And he said, I didn't eat anything between the motos and didn't drink anything.
Strawberries and something.
Yes.
Water and strawberries.
Milk or something. I don't know. So I can't remember now. We'll have to go back and rewatch it. But he said he just how terrible nutrition he did, and didn't know anything about that kind of thing at that time. But yeah, that's interesting. So you got a little humbled that day on the KX 500 sliding across the ground, it sounds like.
Yeah, and a funny quick story on the beginning of that. So I'm already nervous, pros are in town, and I'm trying to get there and obviously do as best I can. But I think it was number 448, it was like a zip code number, And anyway, I had to Jeff Ward, who was number one on Factory Kawasaki on the KX500 at the time, and Rick Johnson was in there. Jeff Stanton, I know you guys had him on the show. He was one of my heroes. We become buddies over the years, and a bunch of the top guys. I think Ron Lachine, Jean-Michel Bale. I think a ton of guys. There's like, crazy fast guys from around the world. And anyway, in the first moto, Jeff Ward had an issue with his bike. So I think I got, like I said, 28th or something. So my buddies, mostly redneck buddies that are like, oh, it doesn't matter who they are. So literally Jeff Ward's mechanics is like making the bounds because he's a shorter guy, obviously, and making his dirt bounds so he can put his feet down, saving his spot. And here's all these pros going in. And now it's my turn. And my buddies are down there going, come down here, you can take his spot because he didn't have. So rightfully, I'm ahead of him. So I'm like, oh, no, I don't want his spot. I'm like, I'm going to get killed with these guys in the first turn. So sure enough, I go down there because they roll my bike in there. And I'm kind of like going, oh, God, it's not my bike. I don't want to get taken out in the first turn by Jeff Ward of all people. So anyway, Jeff Ward I didn't know him at the time. I know him now, but I'm a great guy. But he just looked up, kind of shook his head a little bit and just started walking towards the other end of the gate because he knew that I had, rightfully so, but nobody else had the courage to go boot him out of his starting spot. But my buddies did. It wasn't me. They rolled the bike right in there, and I'm like, oh no, this is going to be bad. But I got pictures of me right in there with the top 10 in the world. And here's number 448 and number next to number 2, 3, 4, 7, all these load numbers.
When you looked at, did you point at your buddies like, well, it wasn't me?
I was like, hey, these guys right here, if you want to beat somebody up, I'll give you their address. But the funny thing is, he had a good start too, but so did I, because I was in with the fast guys coming over the tunnel jump at Brim Tioga. I think I was 5th or 6th, and Wardy's behind me in 7th or whatever with the number 1 plate. So it was pretty cool. I got a great start and a little bit better moto, but actually, I cartwheeled in the whoops right after that, so it went backwards real quick. But I had a better moto afterwards. Well, it was exciting for a few turns.
You went easy on Wardy. You just cartwheeled, went down, and hey, go on by, buddy. But
yeah, I didn't want to take that. From the first race on the nationals.
So you're doing the motocross thing. At what point did you flip? Because you say you went back and forth between moto and off road. At what point did you go off road and go, okay, this is my home?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if there was a distinct time. I like I said, got into all of it, started in the hare scrambles, and then at like 13 or so, also was doing the hare scrambles simultaneously and the motocross at, 13, 14, 15, 16. And then at 16, you could get your license, obviously, for driving, and I could do the enduros. So I ended up, by faith having it, there's the National Enduro at Speedsville, like I said, there's right here in my backyard. And the dealer I was riding for, Gold Sport Cycle out of Ithaca, Jerry Lyons, he and his wife ran a great shop, and they sponsored me. And Randy Hawkins at the time was number 1 National Enduro champ, and Dave Bertram from California came to town, and they wanted to test their bikes. So we took them up to Ray Davis's, my mentor, and he was like 9-time New York State Enduro champion, Ray was. And anyway, said, yeah, we can test with him, and Steve will take you out there. So we got to ride, and I got to ride with him all day on Friday and had a ball and was riding really fast on track and the trails. But they put me on Dave Bertram's minute for the race, and Randy Hawkins was 1 minute behind him. And all during the race, I was all over Dave Bertram. He waved me by a few times, and then I took off by myself. And then Randy only caught me once out of all the loops there, and I stayed right with him to the finish. So I ended up 4th overall at my first National Enduro. So that was lucky. And I was on a number 448 again with bald motocross tires and stock suspension. And somebody gave me a set of Barkbusters for that race. But that kind of started the beginning of the end when Charles Holcomb, the race team manager at Suzuki Off-Road, I guess Randy Hawkins and Dave called him up and said, hey, there's this crazy kid out of New York that is fast. You need to help him. And like the following week, I got a care package, and I was doing backflips. It was a piston and rings from Suzuki, straight from Charles Holcomb. And he said, great job on your race. And, we're going to keep an eye on you. And that was kind of the start of the beginning of the off-road veer hard off-road style.
Yeah. So when you officially, you're doing this full-time racing, and, were you were on a Suzuki, but when did you become a factory Suzuki racer? How quickly before, or I should say, how quickly after that National Enduro, your 4th overall, approximately, when did you have to give us the year exactly, but was it few years later or next year, or how did that work?
Yeah. So I was still going to college, studying business at Cobleskill, and then I transferred into Cortland for economics and management science, and got my 4-year degree. So school is always the biggest thing with my parents being school teachers. So I was doing that simultaneously. But that was right about when I was about, I think, 18, somewhere in there, 18, 19. And the very next weekend was a national in Michigan. And they decided, since I was running over Dave Bertram, who was number 2, I think, in the series the weekend before, they put me on Randy's row because he's the number 1 guy. So at least, be faster and he'd be out of there. And I remember he crashed. We tested the day before, and they thought I was crazy in the sand because I'd been in Florida a lot and riding crew and a bunch of stuff. So I love the sand, really fit my style with, being aggressive on the bike and speed and strength. So anyway, they were pretty impressed there. And then the next day he crashed in the first test. Randy did in front of me. And I waited there like, oh, I can't pass the number 1 guy. Like, he fell in the test. Well, now what do I do? And he's looking up with big eyeballs. He's like, go, Steve, go. And his, South Carolina accent. I'm like looking at him like, okay. So I pin it and go like another 5 miles. And coming into the check, here's this, I think I still had 448 on my bike. Coming into the check, and then Randy slides in behind me. So I beat him the first check, and all the checkers are going, what in the world happened? And who's this kid? So anyway, so that was kind of the 3 or 4 races to the end. I think I ended up 3rd at that national in Michigan from the 250A class. And then I got that next winter, they said, hey, we're going to try to help you out some. And Randy Hawkins is one of my best friends. We were both best men at each other's weddings and go back, 25 years. And he actually told me, he goes, hey, Steve, I think he only got 2 or 3 or 4 bikes at the time. I'll give you one of my bikes and you can actually use it next year. And he literally did. I stopped at his house, and he had one of his bikes brand new in a crate. And that was the beginning of the, give the shirt off his back.
That's awesome. I think that it cut out again on us. We apologize to the audience for that, but the last thing we heard was Randy gave you one of his 3 of the 4 bikes, one of his Suzukis.
Yeah, yep. So I was honored to get that, and couldn't afford another bike, so he gave me that, and I raced it the whole next year. And he and I go way back, and we're best friends then, and best men at each other's wedding, and I'll never forget that. That was really the
testing 1, 2.
Oh. Yeah, we're back. Sorry about that.
No, it's just, we can put a man in the moon, but we can't talk to each other on the internet, yeah. But no, it's all good. And I mean that, that's an interesting story because that's not, I'm just going to assume that is not typical. It is not typical for somebody to give another, an up and coming A rider or future AA rider one of their bikes. That's Randy Hawkins just became a lot more cooler for sure. That's a pretty neat story.
What do you ride now, Steve?
So I've got a bunch of bikes, about 10 of them, but I'm riding right now at KTM 350 and KTM 450.
Okay.
The 350 is my favorite bike at the moment, but I do have 250s and 300s and trials bikes and everything else.
I've ridden the 350s for years, and finally sold it this last COVID time, and so I've got a 300 KTM sitting here. So we're trying to get it all ready to try to do a little bit of racing this summer, if things all line up.
Might as well.
Fantastic.
Well, you mentioned, and I got to share this story because I talked about it before we started, but it was. You mentioned going to school and that kind of thing. So I don't know if you remember this, Steve, but again, as a kid racing GNCCs, and you're always my favorite racer, for sure. You're always the nicest guy in the world. I think your wife was right on that. And so it was 10th grade, okay, my sophomore year of high school, and I had to do a project. It was a careers class. And I'm like, well, we're racing GNCCs. I'm a young kid in high school. Well, what else would you want to be than a professional dirt bike racer, right? So I'm like, well, who could I interview? And, I emailed Steve and I said, hey, I got to do this project. Can I talk to you at the race record you, interview you, and you did. I don't know if you remember that at all, Steve, but you did that for me, and I appreciate that. I got an A on it, by the way, and that was 20. That
Because
was
of Steve.
because of Steve, yeah,
Because
for
of
sure.
Steve.
So I filmed them racing and that kind of thing, and had the interview. It was a hit in class because I mean nobody else had a professional athlete on the video there, but
I have to ask, 8mm and a cassette recorder.
no,
okay.
the recorder itself was about half the size of this table.
All right, I
Set
want to
on
make
my
sure.
shoulder, and and but yeah, that always stood out to me, just a really cool thing, because you didn't have to do that. And here, this is your job, and you're supposed to be focused on the race, and you took 10 minutes out of your day before the race even started that morning. And I think I got done racing in the morning class, and then got off my bike, went and talked to you. And I don't know, just that really stuck out to me as a pro doing that for a fan. Really class act, Steve. That was really cool. So appreciate it very much.
Well, I'd like to say, make a comment on that too. Like you said, whether I've done a little car racing and, off-road racing and stuff like that. And like you said, very few athletes, even want to see anybody or hear anybody or anything like around race time, but there is those few, very few back then. But I do see now, and probably Denise is probably, well, maybe Steve both. I don't know if that's part of the training, part of the culture that's starting to be developed now, that, hey, that is part of, being with the fans and talking with the fans and being that personal. Cause I do see it starting to turn a little bit, other than being right in the truck and you don't come out of the motorhome until they get on the bike and ride off. I do see a little bit more interaction. What's your take on that, Denise?
Yeah. I think that people are different. Somebody like Steve, he really got a boost out of being with his fans and talking to people, and that he was good at it. He could do that and race. But there's also athletes that can't do that really need to protect that time pre-race, because they get depleted by talking and giving themselves to fans. And so they have to get a little bit more focused internally and behind closed doors. But I often see people, they get a bad rap because of that, because they're not out there and signing, 100 or posters. But at the end of the day, those guys have to know themselves enough to know what it is that they need. And they have to protect their time if that's what has to happen. But Steve was...
Can you?
I don't think they can hear us either until they come back. Oh, there they are.
There they are.
We heard Steve was.
Steve was. That was the end.
Yes, as Steve was he was that kind of guy that, and still is, that he really gets boosted by being around fans and talking, and that's helpful to him.
Well, we, like you said, for the last 7 years, we've run a small practice track here in Ohio, and then we also ran Delta, Delta Raceway too for the COVID year, and got it opened up. But one of the things we ran a pro race. So we sort of nicknamed it the past meets the present. So we've had, some local pros, some, the hands have been over, a number of different people have been over here. And one of the things we did is, of course, when during break time, when we let the pros actually do a 2-motor race. And, one of the things we did is we got them to do a little bit of a picture, a little bit of a bio, and then they signed autographs for these little kids. And I'll tell you, it is just, it is so great. I mean, we put this together because I had kids and grandkids, and so we sort of tried to gear it to a family sort of affair. But it was so cool to watch these little ones being able to see somebody that they see on TV, or, that's really, that they look upwards to be able to actually see them. And Jeremy gave away his amateur number plate front number plate there to a young man because he had just got his pro plate. So that was the coolest thing. But for us, that was really the neatest thing to see the interaction between some of these young kids, even the parents. I mean, some of these parents too, the same way. They're just as bad as little kids, but it was so cool to see them interacting with these racers, and all of the racers we've had come out all, did a fantastic job with, helping these kids and talking to them and sort of walking through the pits and stuff like that. So it was really cool. And I think that means so much to a lot of people.
Where did you get that from Steve? Do you think that's where you were raised type of thing? That's just who you are. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, thanks for Ahmad and Matt that you got an A on your deal and you chose me. So thank you for that. And yeah, I love people and I'm a passionate one on the sport and people. And I know exactly where I came from. I was going to mention that story. So good question. So I was at Watkins Glen racetrack. My dad used to race vintage cars. And at the same time, Formula One was there with their cars. So talk about a huge weekend to be amateurs, basically, and right next to Mario Andretti and Nicky Lauda and James Hunt and all the top pro Formula One race car drivers at the time. So we'd go there. It's only about 40 minutes. My grandparents lived close enough where you can hear the race cars go by. So we were always there. That's how my dad got into cars. But anyway, I was there. I was about 7 years old. And with my dad, who was racing vintage cars, and Mario Andretti was there, who was one of my heroes, as well as Nicky Lauda. But I saw him in the first turn, and he was standing all by himself, and I was a little tiny kid, and I had a jacket on, a hat on, and I had my little tag to get into the racetrack. And I walked up to him, and he was watching his son, Michael, race at the time. And I said, "Mr. Andretti, could I please have your autograph?" And he looked at me, and he put his arm around me, and he signed my pass, and basically said, "You know what, here you go, son," and kind of gave me a little tap on the shoulder and the biggest smile. And I said, "You know what, if anybody ever asks for my autograph or wants to talk to me, I'm going to do that," because that changed my life. So it definitely was from just like Marty was saying, something that happened with one of my heroes. And I've tried to make sure it could be that for one kid that gets to hopefully, meet me someday.
That's awesome. Is your parents still living, Steve?
They are, yeah.
Okay. And I remember your mom, if I remember right, she went to Italy in 97, correct?
She did.
She did, yeah.
Yeah, I remember her because she was like the nicest person there besides yourself. But I don't, again, I was spectating at that trip. I was 14, 15 years old at the time. But she was just like the nicest person. I think she was always trying to help out all the other racers and make sure that they were fed and all that kind of thing from what I remember. But yeah, I just, those roots, man, it really makes a big, that story, that was a great story. Just that impact lasted throughout your career and still does, which is awesome. So that's
sounds
cool.
like a mom. That sounds like a mom.
Race mom.
Yep. Well, that I had one of the questions. I think I might have sent it to Steve too. So we're talking about Italy. Can you and Denise tell us some of the neat places and cool places you were able to, travel due to this great sport?
Yeah.
Sorry, it broke up just a little. Say the question again.
Yeah, I say, we'll move right in. You talked about Italy, Matt had. So with that being said, I think one of the questions I had for you was, where are some of the places this great sport has taken you and Denise over these number of years?
Yeah, very blessed to do what I love, as well as travel to 13 different countries around the world. Denise has been to many of them with me, with Italy and 3 times to Japan and Brazil.
Well, next time we'll have you guys, if you don't mind, just drive to Toledo, Ohio, and we'll have you in the little studio here. Next time that'd be great. If you're ever rolling through Toledo, awesome. We'll have you live in studio.
There you go. We heard Brazil.
Yes, the last thing we heard was Brazil. You guys went to Brazil, and that was where you ended.
Yeah, so I've been got to travel all over the world, in Japan and Italy and you name it, with different races and different 6 days, and you name it. It's been really one of those sports, and got to travel the world at a young age and still love it and still traveling. Denise, not to let the cat out of the bag, but leaves for Egypt not tomorrow, but the next day. So we're all over the world still. And I think it's one of those things, you never arrive and you just want to see the world, and, you're really become a greater conduit of being the best you can be when you see all different cultures and get to really see this planet and these people and the beautiful world that's out there on or off the dirt bike.
Have you been able to do that with the whole family too?
Quite often, the whole family. Yeah. And we do ski trips in Vancouver, or you name it, all over. So we do a lot that tries to travel, and really, really love it.
Yeah, actually we've been very lucky in our business too, that when my kids were younger and been able to travel all around the United States, and of course had to be there usually a few weeks. So in a lot of places we went, so the trailer always went along with bikes. So we were able to ride just about everywhere in the United States. So it is fun. It's really enjoyable. Now the boys and the girls are grown up, and now the second wave, the grandkids are coming through. So now we're excited to move my grandson from the motocross track over to off-road stuff a little bit now, and get him I can keep up with him. I'm thinking maybe, but if not, I'll have to go take some classes from Steve and try to keep up with him.
Yeah, you should get all of Steve's, portfolio of help and coaching and stuff, and maybe you can put a wheel on your grandson once in a while.
Well, maybe. I'm not quite sure, but we do. It is a plan, though, when he comes for the summer times to start to use the tapes and go through the tapes and get working.
Absolutely.
I know we're probably pushing the limit on.
Yeah, maybe a few more questions, if that's all right.
I was going to say, talk about training real quick. I was just talking about, I was, doing a little training with my grandson. Marty takes us out riding. The first thing he takes us to is over by the trials part of, the rocks and stuff over there in Arizona. And then he takes us to the turn track. You've been over on that dumb turn track?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
He takes me there, and he gets me through the turn track, and then say, okay, let's go ride. And I'm about ready to go home after the turn track because he makes me do a few laps on that thing and to get prepped up. But yeah, there's some pretty cool things out there in the desert that's been set up by a number of, you get to see some of Taylor's extreme trails that are just unbelievable. And
Taylor Robert,
yeah.
I mean, yeah. What's your
Steve and Taylor cut those trails together.
Oh, did you really?
Taylor was a little guy when Steve first moved out there. We moved next door to Roberts.
Well, that's cool. I think you Steve, you have a YouTube channel, because I spent a little bit of time watching that. I think, didn't you? I remember seeing a video, maybe you doing some turn track stuff with some of your riders.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the turn tracks, you can't fake it in the turn track as far as style and precision, elbows up, where you're looking, all that. So turn tracks are what I really did for myself in my whole 18 years as a factory rider. And then now still, I was just writing the programs for our riders every week, and turn tracks are in there, and skills and working on that. It's like a basketball player. They're still working on layups and free throws that they've been doing since they're 3 years old, even though they're 20 or 30, and they're some of the top pro basketball players in the world.
What is your
They just froze up again.
man, that is weird, because I've got the Wi-Fi here, Marty, is full.
Yeah, I know.
Full tilt.
It's just, sometimes it's just,
Yeah.
I just checked to see if Andrew by any chance was
He's not online.
streaming, nothing, no.
Yeah. Well, I really just want to ask him one more thing, and we can call it a night. 4:30.
Okay, sorry, I missed it there.
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
Who knows with weather or whatever happens, it's, this is sort of, we're still back in the DSL range over here too. They haven't moved up into cable or anything yet over here where I'm at in the country. So
I've got just a few more questions for you guys. Steve, what was your favorite ISDE race?
It would have to be 1991 in Czechoslovakia, and the main reasons, it was just like New York as far as the terrain, so that really suited me. It was only my second 6 days. I was on the junior trophy team, and I got the overall top American, beat all the 6 trophy riders. Back then we had 6 trophy riders instead of 4 like now. And the junior team, we won the junior trophy. So that was, the national anthem playing has never made the same, sound since. It's been one of those that's just such encrypted in my mind of the passion and the love of the country and representing the country and being so honored to win that.
Yeah, because it was you. If I'm going off the memory bank, wasn't Chris Smith on the team?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Jimmy Lewis and David Rhodes.
There you go. I was going to guess them. Yeah, no.
I was helping you.
Yeah, I remember the '96 team when you're on the trophy team. That was my first year I went to spectate. That was one of the best trips of my life. That was so awesome. I don't know if you remember that year or not, but you guys, one of the funniest things, you guys rented the rental cars and you were driving around the track there out in the middle of nowhere. You were racing the rental cars. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. Almost every.
So does the rental car
Yeah, the
company.
rental car company. I don't think they.
They got him on the blacklist.
I don't think they rented those after the Suzuki boys got done with them. But yeah, that was a cool trip. So
Social media doesn't allow that to happen so much anymore.
no, you got to be on your best behavior. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, honestly, like my buddies. Speaking of social media, my buddies and I talk about this once in a while. Like, could you imagine if we had a YouTube channel back in the day? We'd be.
Oh no, thank God.
Oh yeah, thank goodness. That's true. But I mean, yeah, you got to be. Yeah, you can't really mess up now. It's too crazy.
Yeah.
But
They're recorded all the time.
absolutely. What was your favorite one? What was your least favorite race? 6 days race.
Wow, I have to think about that. All of them were different. Some were harder or easier than others. Probably Poland for me. I was on the trophy team at the time. We were doing okay as a team. I think we were in 5th or 6th. And on day 5, I crashed in a special test and broke my ankle. Ooh. And then coming back in from there, like it was nearly like 20 miles back. I was riding back, still in the race, and didn't tell anybody. But my bike actually blew up like 3 miles from the finish, so I had to push it in with a broken ankle and had to rebuild it. And by then, another one of our team members on the trophy DNF. So I didn't. If you lost them back then, you didn't have any throwaways. So they said not to go back in. But I rebuilt the bike, and that was probably the worst one I had. The only DNF out of my all my 6 days.
Yeah, and how many did you do total?
8 of them.
8. Okay, cool. That's awesome.
So Denise, we asked Steve what was most exciting part of racing. What's been the most exciting part of racing, in your time during all this?
One of the things that I was really impressed with when I came around the racing world, because I didn't know anything about it when I first met Steve, couldn't fathom that you'd get paid to ride motorcycles or any of that, but just the camaraderie, just the really good people. And it continues to be that way. There's been times when I've not been to the races for several years because I've had my own stuff going on and very busy. And then I come back around the racing and it's just, everybody's happy to see you. It's just really fantastic people. A lot of camaraderie. We've had a lot of fun meeting people over the years, and it's lifelong relationships. There's that. And then there's this other piece of what all of you do on a motorcycle is just impressive. There's just an incredible skill out there. Yeah,
the word that comes to mind is family,
Yes.
Yes. I remember one time we were down in for Bike Week racing, and my dad was he fouled a plug. I think he had like an RMX. This was like late 90s, mid 90s, somewhere around there. And he fouled the plug. And I think, Steve, I don't know if it was your mechanic, one of the Suzuki guys, because he's sitting there kicking, and then he's starting to take the plug out. One of the Suzuki guys runs out of the pits, brings my dad a plug. He didn't know my dad from Adam. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that, you can't, where does it, where else is it, what other sport does that happen? I mean, really and truly.
Yeah, that's the same. I was thinking the same thing, as far as, just like riding in the family, for, every Sunday afternoon at noon, so we'd go, Marty and I would go to, we'd ride, everybody calls it something different, 11 Mile, Blue Run Wash, or, whatever they call it, the runs down out there. And so we'd park right off in the Bartlett Dam Road. And we'd park off there. That's where we'd park, unload our bikes. We'd ride. And then at noon, my wife and the kids would come. And they'd bring a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, and we'd have lunch. And then we'd take my kids, Marty or Phil, another gentleman I used to ride, would throw one of our kids on the bike with us, and we'd take them out and take turns riding out through the desert, with the kids and stuff. And it's like, there's not too many things. It's not like you can take a kid to play football and take them out there with you on the football field and do that kind of stuff. But, I remember, coming back from the river, and, my oldest son now, his head's bobbing back and forth and clipping me underneath my chin with his helmet, and he's sleeping and just, enjoying it. So definitely been a great, for us, it's been a great sport for family
sport for sure.
Well, we probably shouldn't keep these guys too long. I'm sorry, Steve, you had a comment there?
Just a real quick family story on that real quick. One of your fellow Ohioans, Scott Plessinger, and I were battling for a win in a national hare scramble. On the last lap, we come down this hill. He's in front of me. There's like 3 miles to the finish, and he hits a rock or something and cartwheels down. And at the bottom of it, there's a barbed wire fence and a turn, which bad setup as we know as track crew anyway. But anyway, he was stuck under his bike, still, under it on his chest, and he's a stocky, strong guy anyway. And I come down the hill and slam on the brakes, and I look down, and he can't move and get the bike off of him. And I'm thinking, win or be a nice guy, win or be a nice guy. So I lift the bike up just enough. He gets out and pins it, jumps on the bike, starts kicking it. I'm running to my bike, kicking it. I'm like, if he beats me, I'm going to kick his butt. I'm all the way to the finish. I literally skid and beat him by a foot, and he got second and I won, but I was so mad. I grabbed him by his jersey. I said, if you would have beat me, I would have thrown the bike back down on top of you. But that's the camaraderie of I wasn't going to let him be burned or be hurt, but I wanted to beat him. So it's like that double-edged sword of the family of, we're all so tight as a family in a dangerous sport, but in the same, so competitive. So to you guys' point, I think in Denise's, it's all about the family and the camaraderie, which is awesome.
Absolutely. Well, we really certainly appreciate you guys coming on with us and sharing some stories, and it's good to see you guys again. And all the best to you, out there in the coaching world and the riding world, and all you guys are doing. You guys are doing a great job. So
absolutely, awesome. Really appreciate you taking your time and being patient with us as we were trying to get through this podcast, try to figure things out and how to make it work. And we still haven't got it quite yet, but we're getting there.
Yes.
But thank you so much for both, Denise and yourself, Steve, for coming on and joining with us. And, you're back home, and I keep thinking I should be back there instead of flat Ohio, but it is home now, but we do get back there quite often. So.
Absolutely.
But you come
Thank you so much, Moni and Matt. And we have, if they go to powerofthemind.coach to our website, if they say Pro Rider 30, that'll give them 30% off of all of our mindset programs. So Denise and I wanted to mention that and to help the riders out. All capital letters, Pro Rider 30.
Does it
be 30% off?
Run by what they do again, Steve?
Yes.
Yeah, they go to powerofthemind.coach is our website. And when they buy the products, if they put in the code Pro Rider 30, all in capital letters, no spaces, they'll get 30% off of our mindset products and programs that we have on there.
Wow, fantastic! Thank you.
That's an awesome offer to throw out there. Does it come with a T-shirt, or is a T-shirt available with your anything on there?
Comes with Steve Hatch.
Because
there you go.
This guy over here, by the time we sign up and wrap up, he'll be on. If there is anything to do with a T-shirt, Marty is going to be on it. It doesn't matter what it is; he's going to be on it. So I assume the promo code, Marty's going to be taking advantage of that situation there tonight. So, We thank you guys again. And as we wrap up, we want to thank our guests, the Hatches, Steve and Denise Hatch, for joining us for episode 5. We also want to thank you, our audience, for supporting the podcast too. Until next time, get out and ride, and remember to leave the sport you love better than you found it. On behalf of my co-host, Marty Wheeler, I'm Matt Bucher. Stay safe, everyone.